and we worked together on designing a protocol to see whether music would assist red blood cells in their longevity, whether the interaction between music and the blood would actually cause the blood cells to live longer. And and it was just a hunch that I'd had many years ago. And anyway, Professor G came here to help me to design the protocol, and we worked for several days. The experiment I'd like to describe now is a kind of, well, it was an amazing moment in my life, a bit like the pyramid moment, but completely different. So what happened was, we'd been working with little vials of blood in the incubator here in the lab. And we also had a control vial in the lab's Faraday cage, which is a very, very quiet control environment, extremely quiet, like an anechoic chamber, almost as quiet as an anechoic chamber. So that's the control. So, and then the vial of blood that's being exposed to music in the incubator in the lab here has a little speaker in there, so we can actually play music to the blood. And the other vial is in, as I say, in a quiet environment. And then we do a test. We're literally using an automatic blood cell meter counter device, and we're testing how many red blood cells are viable in the control and how many red blood cells are viable in the music blood. Bearing in mind, it's the same blood, we just decanted it into two different vials, right? So, and the results were astonishing immediately. We were seeing significant, like 15, 20% increase in the viability of the red blood cells. But we then had to kind of scratch our heads and figure out, well, what's driving this mechanism? What could it be? Well, the clue came from the fact that we had tested classical music, some selections of classical music, but then we also did some experiments with pop music. And it turned out, very counterintuitively, that the classical music was quite poor in its return percentages compared with the pop music. The pop music outshone the classical music every time. And this is, really bizarre, isn't it? You've probably heard of that experiment where somebody played pop music to a plant and it wilted. Rock music, I think it wilted. But then when they played classical music, the plant bloomed. I don't know how much truth there is in that. I suspect that one of the factors in that experiment, if it really did happen, because it's kind of legendary, isn't it? And I've never found out who it was that said that or conducted that experiment, but I'm suspecting that they really turned up the welly, the volume of the rock music to dangerous levels, basically. So the poor plant, of course, like anyone, would be affected negatively by that. Whereas if you play classical music at a modest level, then of course the plant would like it, so that may be the underlying, reason for the plant wilting. But in this case, it was the exact opposite. We were controlling the sound level very carefully to 80 to 85 dBA. And so basically the blood was responding way better to popular music than it was to the classical music. And it turned out that the reason for this, cutting a long story short again, is the low frequency, throbbing, pulsing, driving bass beat of popular music.